Up next is a session for every contractor who's ever felt like jobs are slipping through the cracks, somewhere between the first call and final payment. In Ring to Revenue, Morgan Knox and Anthony Swow break down the full customer workflow, from lead intake and booking to follow-up communication and close, showing how the small gaps in your process can create major inefficiencies inside your business. Whether you're still building your foundation or refining an established operation, you'll walk away with a clear understanding of how modern contractors are tightening workflows, reducing friction, and creating a more consistent path to build a business that runs more efficiently from the first ring to the final invoice. Let's jump in.
Hey, you guys, Coach Morgan here, our Senior Director of Accounting Solutions here at House Call Pro and avid AI and tech enthusiast. Really excited to get a chance to connect with you guys and being joined by Anthony to talk about our Ring to Revenue session. So today's session, we're going to be talking about all of the ways that some of the newest technology that we've been implementing in our business, including AI, can really help us with all of these maintenance, kind of unsexy follow-up pieces of the business, which are what we think of as leaks, operational leaks, right? They're these little things that I think all of us are really familiar with, like the missed calls, the missed follow-ups, some of the accountability conversations that can be hard to have with our teams whenever we're managing so many different project threads. And all of the ways that technology and AI can be slipped in to help plug these leaks, which translates to a lot more money, time, and resources staying in your pocket as a business owner. So I'm excited to dive in. Anthony, thank you so much for taking the time to join today. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit more about you and your background, and how did you and I end up together today talking about technology in your business?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Morgan. So, guys, I'm Anthony. I'm with Dade Super Cool Air Conditioning. It's a family-owned business here in Miami, Florida. It was started by my dad back in 1984, so about 40 years now. And basically, we started this whole conversation with AI because of our growth and from where we came from to where we're at now, and how we've implemented technology into our business from starting with pen and paper to then getting House Call Pro to then slowly getting some automations to then heavy use of AI. So yeah, it's a huge journey. I'm happy to share it with everyone. So I mean, I'm ready to go.
All right, I love it. So, guys, today what we want to do is we want to talk through some of the really specifics of like the before and then maybe the current and kind of what the future state can and is starting to look like for different businesses across some of these different pieces of the customer journey. So we know that of course there's the big challenge that is one of the things that I think is talked about the most, which is how are we doing marketing? How are we capturing those leads? So we'll talk about that a little bit in just a second. But then we're going to spend most of our time talking through what happens after that. Where are all of these little operational pieces beyond getting the first lead that helps us with conversion and retention and making sure that we're keeping that money within the business? So, Anthony, let's talk about the getting found part first, right? This is the marketing, this is how people find you. Tell me a little bit about, what did this used to look like 30 years ago in your business compared to what it's been looking like more recently, and especially what it's been looking like the last few years with, AI coming in and shaking up the landscape.
Yeah, so 30 years ago, obviously, I was a little kid just watching my dad run the business, but I remember everything like if it was the other day. I remember the beepers. I remember those big brick cell phones. I remember having the phones in the car. No iPhones, no small pocket cell phones. It was crazy. I can't even imagine being at that state. So we all started where he started at that time using beepers, getting that beep, having to go to a payphone. Look at all the steps that he had to do. Then technology just grew. Then we had in cell phones, still no text messaging, or we had that 9 segment button where you had to press the button 3 times just to get a letter. Um, so it wasn't efficient at all. Then we are during that time he had other softwares similar to like QuickBooks. Basically, think of it like a scheduling software. And as we grew, that technology got a little bit better. but none of it was internet based. We had to use pen and paper. Those pen and papers had to be turned into the invoice. Double entry had to be made. Deciphering of some technician's handwriting. Hopefully, nothing got wet and damaged. So it was tough time. We have it easy now, especially now with technology and AI. It's unbelievable. Um, so then we finally signed up with House Call Pro. Took a little bit of convincing because my dad's really old school. Um, and once we had House Call Pro for about, I would say 6 months, we started to feel that like weight put off our shoulders as we started to get into technology. So then we started to realize, wow, well, technology's advanced. It's there to help us. It's there to help us be more efficient, take off that weight off of our shoulders. And then House Call Pro started to grow as a business themselves. House Call Pro started making updates with software in the schedule board, in the calls, the voice, automations in pipeline, and now AI. So we've just been growing as House Call Pro is also growing, and it has been an amazing ride because of that weight off of your shoulders. I could just feel it. I could just feel it instantly.
That's so neat. So to say it back to you, Anthony, um, before state, right, what you remember with the family business growing up and kind of whenever you first started working in the business, right, before we had maybe didn't even have like fully baked voicemails. We didn't always have phones in our pocket. So there was like this missed call phone tag game that we were used to playing. And in the customer journey, somebody gives you a call, they can't get a hold of you right there as a business. They move right on down that list, right? Before we had more solid CRMs and technologies, we were handwriting appointments in a little calendar book, hoping that we didn't lose that book. We were writing estimates on paper, trying to keep track of them on the floorboards of our work vans and trucks, trying to make sure that we invoiced everything on time. Heck, even just collecting checks and making sure that those checks fully made it back to the bank when we intended them to and actually got deposited whenever we wanted them to. These are all of these pieces that were so manual. And I want to really emphasize that like so many businesses are still doing some of these things in that way. And that's not because there's something wrong with them, right? That's not because there's anything wrong with any of you listening to this that hear some of that in yourself. You're managing a really complex organism with a business, right? These are a lot of details and a lot of pieces. And these maintenance tasks can be really hard for people to keep track of with consistency, especially when the business starts to scale, when it starts to grow into more people beyond just you as the business owner. And so that's the beautiful opportunity that we have right now with technology starting to plug in, and especially some of the more advanced stuff that we're going to talk about with AI and automations, being able to step in and really help support on these. I think of them as like brushing your teeth type of tasks, right? They're the really unsexy juggling paperwork, entering information from one system into the next one, dotting the I's and crossing the T's that can be really hard for people to stay focused on, but that we know that this is where those little leaks and those the missed opportunities to close a job or get that referral or get that review happen within the business. So Anthony, you were telling me a little bit before, whenever you saw this transformation, especially with your dad and you working in the business together, we're no longer writing down our appointments in the little black book. We're no longer juggling all of these paper estimates, trying to make sure we're matching the right estimate to the right customer. What did that start to look like for your dad's, quality of life, for your quality of life with your growing family? Like, what was the impact of that in the day to day for you guys?
Yeah, so as a kid, my dad gave us an amazing life. Anytime we wanted something, we were able to get it. Except for one thing. Unfortunately, he had to work 24/7 almost, unless he was sleeping. So just having to track all of that stuff because you're talking about your money, your financials, your livelihood. And so one check missed, two checks missed. That's a lot of money that could be forgotten to be paid. And then if you're not tracking any of that stuff, you won't even know until it really hits you. So just just getting some technology into the business, we noticed that quality of life of my dad. You can feel like this weight off of his shoulders. Now he has a little bit more time to spend with the family And this is just the beginning phase without AI and automations. This is just using technology like House Call Pro and having everything on a mobile device, on a tablet, in your truck, or at your son's baseball game. You know, so just that quality of life of just being remote when you need to be remote. You can be on vacation. I don't recommend it, but you can be on vacation and look at your phone and see what your books are looking like at a glance. It's just technology has advanced so much just to help with the quality of life. And you can actually get a lot more done as well. So that's where the scaling part happens. And now you can hire employees and hopefully leverage that so that you can delegate some of those tasks and you don't have to do it all.
Love that. Okay, so now I feel like we're getting into the exciting part of this, which is where has the technology taken us in the last few years that's so innovative and driving so many of these exciting differences? And, specifically, let's chunk it up and talk through a little bit of like the customer journey. So customer finds you, they see you, they find your Google business profile now. We have all of these different ways for businesses to, or for customers to find and connect with businesses that they need. I'm a customer and I pick up the phone and I give you a call, Anthony. What does that look like now? And how is that different than how it looked even like 5 or 6 years ago?
Well, right now, after about two rings, you're getting an answer. A couple years ago, you'd be lucky sometimes if we even answered because we might have been on the other line or at a job site. So right now, you're getting an answer within two rings. And it's going to be somebody there to help you, whether it's a real person or if it's an AI agent. Somebody's going to get your information, what you're calling about, and they're going to let you know, hey, you're taken care of. So instantly you're going to get, as a customer, that peace of mind. Days Super Cool is ready to go. A couple of years ago, you might have called and you might have gotten a voicemail, or maybe somebody else was on the line and I had another person on the other line on hold, and you would have just gone like if the call dropped, or if the phone was disconnected or something like that.
Mm.
So before it was, hopefully I'm available to answer that call. And I can only imagine how much money, how much time, how much energy my dad spent in trying to build his business just so that he can get recognized, for then at the end of that like race, him not answer and then call back 10 minutes later to then hear that customer, hey, I'm sorry, I called somebody else. And that's completely heartbreaking. So that was one of the things that today I said, absolutely not. We need to make sure that that never happens to us.
So I think that's such a good point because this is one of the most critical parts of our entire interactions in the business, right? Which is that we've done all of the work, we put all of this resources into being out there, being found, being noticed with our marketing. And somebody calls into the business, and if they experience that dropped call, they experience a voicemail inbox, if they don't get a call back fast, right? If they don't feel like they have a meaningful next step in their journey, like they've got that appointment booked or they know exactly what their next step is to get a technician to come out to the house, there's so many people that drop off at this point. So this is one of the biggest areas of leaks within our business. And thankfully, one of the things that the technology now has come so far in plugging those leaks. So could you tell me a little bit, Anthony, about like what kind of feedback do you get or do you see with your customers now compared to what it used to be? Like could you just, I think a lot of people have a concern about having a little bit too much technology in their business sometimes, especially at this point with their customers. They're like, do my customers want to talk to an AI? Do my customers, are they okay with getting an automated text message or a ringless voicemail, letting them know next steps? And I think there can be a lot of concern about that. So I'd be really curious to hear like, what have you actually seen in the field whenever you've implemented these kinds of things? What kind of a difference has it made?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten mixed feedback from all different types of customers. I've gotten good feedback, I've gotten constructive feedback, and I've gotten just bad feedback. Some of the good feedback is, wow, you guys answer all the time, or, you're always available. I'm glad that you guys are my AC guys. Other feedback, like bad feedback, is I don't want to talk to a robot. I want to talk to a real person. And all of that is good feedback. It's constructive, right? And you can hear everybody out, and there's also ways to maneuver those customers as well. Just because you're using AI to answer your phone doesn't mean that they have to go through with the entire conversation. You can have AI tell the customer, hey, I am an AI agent. If you want to talk to a real person, just let me know and we can transfer you. Now, we lose the features and the benefits of AI because now if they're transferring you in your phone and you're not available, they're probably going to get your voicemail. But that's the caveat, right? That's the double-edged sword. So there is ways where you don't absolutely have to use AI and 100% dive headfirst into it and say I'm all in. You can, wet your feet a little bit. You can try it. You can go little by little, and you can address all types of customers. You can say, hey, this customer is okay with AI. We're going to leave it. If this customer is not okay with AI, there's other ways to maneuver it and transfer to a real person. And there's ways that you can't even imagine sometimes with AI of what things that you can do.
Well, and I think you bring up a couple of really interesting points there, which is like if you think about before you had an AI agent or something helping you answer your phone versus now, in the now state, someone who doesn't want to talk to AI, they're still having, I would argue, a better customer journey interaction because they have the option, right? They have the option to use the AI. If they don't want to, then it can transfer them to a human. They're still being helped. And we think about and compare that to so I think a good example that I like to mention when pros mention like sometimes they hear from a customer that didn't prefer having the AI experience. I like to say, well, how did you have that conversation with that person? You had to get on the phone with them at some point. So something here worked because for you to even get that feedback, they were stayed engaged with your business long enough to be able to share that insight and that feedback with you, which is like prior state. How many of those people would have called, maybe hit dead air or a voicemail? And never actually had a conversation with you, or maybe never even converted into a customer.
Yeah, I just think a lot of people are also stuck on the old beliefs. Back in the day when you would call maybe your internet service provider and you call and it's a robot saying, how can I help you? And then you have to yell at its service 1,000 times. Or if you cough, it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. And then you got to start over. So I think we're just stuck also in those old beliefs of that's how AI is. But we've advanced so much that AI can also understand and even respond using your own company knowledge base and kind of help the customer out with basic questions or basic scheduling. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with AI today that AI existed before, and it probably wasn't as good, and we're just thinking that's how it is still. So that's also the obstacle that we need to overcome in our heads is AI isn't the same as it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago or anything like that. So that's my experience. And those customers that have given me that feedback, like I don't want to talk to a real person, eventually they did talk to a real person on the same phone call, by the way.
Hmm.
Because not only do we have AI in the upfront, in the facing part, but then we also, okay, you want to speak to a real person? Fine. But we also have technology where we can forward our calls to an answering service like ACP Assist. So if we're still not available, it'll ring a couple times, and then now an answering service is handling the call. So it's a real person now, but we still have the technology embedded in our business where we're still not missing that phone call or that phone call is not going to voicemail.
Absolutely. And when you think about, how somebody, like you said, somebody might have a negative idea about an AI agent, but if you put them in a situation where, for example, maybe they call a business and this still happens, and now it's a pet peeve of mine because I think some of the AI agents are so much better, but you call a business and you are maybe stuck listening to like a 60-second long explanatory voicemail or a phone tree where it's like, this is our address and these are our hours and we are not open at these times and these dates. And press one to get to here and press two to get to here and press three to get to here. And you're stuck there listening to it for a really long time. And like you mentioned, versus maybe you have a pretty good AI agent, the technology has gotten so much better that's talking to you like a human and it's not just spitting random information at you, but it can answer the questions that you have and it can transfer you exactly where you want to go or book that appointment straight for you so that people don't have to talk to a human, but they certainly can if they want to. So I just think that difference in experience can be really, really profound. You told me something interesting, Anthony, about how sometimes people and customers that are calling your business will interact with a couple of your AI agents for a couple different things, and they might not even realize that they're AI. Could you tell me a little bit more about what that's been like?
Yeah, so I mean, it's actually happened to me myself, and I'm a heavy AI user. So I'll give you my personal experience as a customer. I've reached out to other companies wanting to look into their services, and I've had full-on conversations for like a good half hour, and then at like the 27-minute mark, I started to realize I was like, wait a minute, this is not a real person. And it like blew my mind. And then I kind of started to play around with it because I was like, this is amazing, this is interesting. And they had the same thing going on for text messaging. So it started with text messaging. They booked the call, and then when they booked the call, this is all AI, by the way. So AI booked the call, texting me, and me still thinking it was a real person. Um, they booked the call. I spoke to the AI agent for like about 25, 27 minutes. And then that's when I realized, holy cow, this is a robot. Um, and then, I eventually ended up getting the service and we tried it out. And, um, it didn't really work out for my business, but the idea is that company, that business, that setup that they did for the text messaging, the voice AI, anybody can do that. If they
Mm.
can do it, we can do it. And that's my biggest like goal at the end of the day. That's my mindset is if anybody can do it, we can do it. As blue collar industries. So that's when I was like, hey, I got to look into different AI technologies, voice technology, answering service technologies, all of that stuff. But yeah, that actually happened to me, and I'm not proud of it because like I should know better, but it was that good. It was that good.
I I love hearing that. Years ago, one of my good friends in the business coaching, Coach Jason, made this comment that I thought was really funny, but also very true. Which kind of like you mentioned, Anthony, that you can give these AI agents or these like chatbots and stuff, whether they're texting or they're talking on the phone with a customer, you can give them great knowledge base for your company. So the answers that they're giving are very consistent and very knowledgeable, sometimes in a way that even a human member of your team, right, might forget something or might not know the exact answer. So Coach Jason had this comment where he was like, one day we're going to be in the space where you're going to be talking on the phone to customer support for 15 minutes before you say, wait a minute, are you AI? And it's going to say, yes, I am AI. And we're going to go, oh, thank goodness, because it's an even better experience in a lot of ways than sometimes having to navigate through sometimes what like, human customer support has looked like in the past. So it could be even better. So you mentioned a few of these different pieces for this part of like, how can we be more helpful to customers? How can we be even more customized to them? So we're not just spitting information at them, but getting them exactly the help that they need when they need it. And you talked about, some of these like the chat bots that we might see on the website, text messaging chatbots, the voice AI receptionist, and the voice receptionist that can even maybe trigger some follow-on automations or transfers. This sounds really complicated, Anthony. And I think you and I know that maybe 5 years ago, having all of these things in your business might have been even more complicated. But what could you tell us about what does it look like to actually set some of those things up in the business today? How easy is it if somebody was like, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know how to set up technology and automations. Where would you recommend that they start and how easy do you think it would be for them to start getting some of these things set up in their business?
Yeah, so I'll just be upfront about everything. Technology is complicated. It doesn't matter what it is. When you buy a new cell phone, learning that new cell phone is complicated. It takes time, it takes your energy, and you have to give it a shot. You have to give it a shot. So when you buy a new phone, if you convert from Android to iPhone or whatever, um, just that one transition alone, you're on a learning curve. So same thing with AI. We're all used to Googling stuff. Everything was Google, Google, Google. How do I do this? How do I do that? When should I do this? When should I do that? And that's all fine and dandy. You can do the same thing with AI. Think when you're Googling stuff and you're typing, how do I do this? Now you've got to go through every single hyperlink, and hopefully you don't click on an opinionated one where they give you wrong information. because you also have to click on all the hyperlinks, read the reviews. You got to understand that this is probably a bad link. And just Google anything, and how many pages are there? There's probably more than 25 pages. Nobody's going to sit and click on every single one and read every single thing. One easy thing, and that anybody can try today, is you go to ChatGPT and you type, "How do I do this? Please give me a step-by-step guide," and make it in layman terms. Okay? And ChatGPT will scan the entire website for you and look for the best results and give you that step-by-step guide and read it to you like a fourth grader. And that's probably my biggest go to, like, till this day. If I don't know how to do something, I'm not saying I know how to do everything. Claude is super complicated. Building code and building things like that on your own, extremely complicated. But AI is there also to be that study guide, that cheat sheet where you can say, "Hey, give me that step by step. How do I do this?" And then even if it tells you a step and you're like, "I still don't get it," you could tell it, "I'm stuck here. Elaborate." And then it'll elaborate and break that up even more. Um, so that's one of the biggest things that I love about AI. And to this day, I still use that. I use it for helping me draft emails. So I don't have to think. You know how sometimes you have a customer that they're really upset and you're like, how do I respond to this and not be emotional about it? Because I'm angry too that he's yelling at me through email. Um, ChatGPT, hey, I need to respond to this. I need to be professional about it. So little things like that that anybody could do right now. Okay. And you could probably do it on the free version of ChatGPT. You don't even have to get the paid subscription. Um, and I would say that's a good starting point. That would be the best starting point.
I think that that's a really great point, which is like, it doesn't have to be complicated, it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't even have to, immediately buy a subscription. Although if you're using the free version of ChatGPT, just or any of these tools, a reminder is like all free things. If you're not paying for it, it's because you're the product. So be very careful about putting sensitive business information or anything like that into a free account while you're testing things out. But I think that's a really great point about starting to use some of these tools in a really accessible way because it's really good at teaching you how to do things step by step. If you feel intimidated or if you feel overwhelmed, it's a great research tool, which is another area where we tend to have leaks in our business. We're spending so much time and we have decision fatigue as business owners, right? Like we're trying to make decisions all the time and it can be exhausting. So something like an AI chat platform can be a really good decision making partner, kind of help you think through or make recommendations. And it just alleviates a little bit of that brain pressure that we all have when we're navigating day to day, right?
Yeah, if you ever feel like you're running into a wall, the first thing I do is I go straight to ChatGPT. Now I do have the paid version, and like you mentioned, if it is the free version, you are the byproduct of that free version. So I and even after, you don't want to put like your social or anything like that. You never know, but um, I would say putting numbers, spreadsheets, things like that, 100%. You can totally do all that stuff. Um, but as soon as I run into a brick wall, I tell ChatGPT, "Hey, I need some help. I need some guidance." One of the stories that I have, and this has nothing to do with my business, but we're a growing family, and I'm shopping for a new car, and I'm stuck between two different ones. But I was stuck before with like four different ones, and I didn't know which one to get. And I plugged in those cars. I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do with it. This is what my end goal is. What's best for me? What's the best purchase? What's the best one that money could buy, and the value and the reliability and blah blah blah. And it gave me my two options. And then now I'm like, okay, well, I got two options. Now give me the pros and cons versus both of the options. And then now I'm able to say, okay, well, I like this con, I don't like this con. And then I can say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And then at the end, the AI agent's going to say, okay, well, based off of what you told me, this is probably going to be the best car for you. Now, I wouldn't say AI is 100% right all the time, but like you mentioned, it does take away from that brain fatigue. At the end of the day, you need to make your own decision.
Totally. And you can check the sources just to, trust but verify, double check and make sure.
Absolutely.
And so I think like that's a really great point about some of these first jumping off points and areas where people could get in and just start playing around with it And you mentioned, like Google, what Google used to look for. And I think that's the other side of this, which is you guys think about and remember all of the ways that, what's so different now than how it was even 5 years ago is that AI is starting to be incorporated in all of these things that you're already using on a daily basis. And so, in terms of how do I get over this feeling of overwhelm or the concern that this is going to be too technically challenging, well, just take a look at the tools that you're already using or the tools that you're thinking about using and start looking to see how easy are they making it for you to use AI in the tools that you're already using. So you don't have to learn something new. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to get super technically dense. So, for example, we talked a lot about the phone receptionist and the text messaging. That's something that a lot of tools are starting to make a lot easier and accessible for you to set up and go in. So doesn't have to be this huge thing where you have to, suddenly learn the ins and outs of a complex automation building platform. A lot of these things are starting to become built into the tools that you use every day. So that's a really big note that I like to share with pros and talking about. One of the best things to do is just become an informed consumer and think about what kind of tools you're working with and how much easier are they trying to make your life by bringing these things to you instead of you having to go do the work yourself to kind of figure out how to set those up and use them. So you brought up a couple of really good examples there, Anthony. I'd love to talk about now we have converted that person into that potential customer, that lead. Now they've booked an estimate, or maybe we've already booked the project for them. So if we think a little bit later in the customer journey, I want to say, let's just talk about follow-ups. There's so many follow-ups that need to happen within our business at different points. So there's the follow-up to try to get a lead to book that first estimate if they didn't book it. Once that estimate's been done, there's the follow up to try to close the job. Once the job's been closed, sometimes there's a lot of scheduling follow ups. And then there's once we finish the project, we might want to follow up to capture a review or ask somebody to leave you a review or to do a referral for your business. Or last but certainly not least, those follow ups to try to make sure that we fully collected on all of the projects that we did. So follow-ups are a really good example of this. Again, it's teeth brushing activity. It doesn't feel sexy. It doesn't feel fun. It can be hard to manage at scale. Could you tell me a little bit, Anthony, about, what did this look like 10 years ago versus what it can look like today? Maybe what does it look like in your business?
Yeah, just imagine 10 years ago, you do 5 jobs a day, and in a whole week, you're at 25 jobs, and you're trying to follow up and trying to getting a review, another recommendation, a referral, um, getting paid, or just doing a happy call just to end that final customer experience as a good experience, on a good note.
Yeah.
You got 25 leads to follow up on, or customers to follow up on. And that's not including the new customers that you have to service the following week. So I don't think it ever happened or back in the day. To be honest, I think, and that's when we realized, like, hey, we're losing a lot of money because some of it was we needed to follow up, and then at that point we needed some office staff. And even then, it's like you mentioned, it's like brushing teeth is unsexy. It's nobody likes to do that routine on a daily basis. So a lot of the stuff has to do with accountability, reminding your team, hey, don't forget to do this. Hey, it's recommended to do this instead of this, and
Mhm.
like coaching and things like that. And some pros and employees will think like, oh, this is you micromanaging me and Big Brother. And so, sure, I guess. But if you think about it, when we put dash cams in the car, they thought the same thing or they think the same thing. But the reality is a dash cam is in case we get into an accident, we have proof to show the insurance or the traffic enforcer. Um, there's always a reason behind it, right? So we're not necessarily micromanaging. We're just trying to scale the business. We're trying to maintain that customer experience to the 100% peak value. We're
Mm,
trying to show value to that customer as to why they pay what they pay or why we
mm,
need to increase pricing and earn more money. Um, when my dad was running the business, back in the 90s, I would say we were comparable to that one man shop. Okay, even though he had two employees on the field and a person in the office, we were still comparable to that one man shop because leads were falling through. We were not following up. It was just kind of like, okay, if I get a hold of him, great. If I don't, let me try again, or I got to call somebody else. So that customer experience was basically just average or below average. Now we're able to follow up through text messages, through ringless voicemails, through emails. We're able to request leads instantly. If a technician has a recommendation right away, and let's say he doesn't upsell that recommendation, right away that customer can get a text message like, "Hey, we noticed that there were some recommendations. Let's talk about it." And then it'll go to a sales guy or all of this is happening with AI. Nobody has to lift a finger. At first, yeah, you have to set it all up, but it's incredible how we can multitask and the accountability is also there. We can remind our team and everything for the most part is uniform. Everybody's saying the same thing or within the same realm of saying the same thing. There's no confusion. There's basically notes saying, hey, this is what happened. This is what the customer said. All of that is happening within minutes. Imagine now those 25 customers that before we had to follow up with one at a time is all happening within 5 to 10 minutes at the same time. So that's the big difference right there. And then now we've got the same company that is a two-man truck with one person in the office and you as a business owner floating around in the office and on the field, okay? But you look like you're a 15 or 20 company or employee company. So I would say that's the biggest take on that, and that's been my experience from the before and right now.
I think you brought up some really good points. So to read it back to you, we kind of talked about there's really two different tracks now that the technology is starting to take. And we're calling it AI, but just you guys who are listening, we're using the term AI kind of interchangeably with things like automations and some of these places that technology streamlines. So back in the 90s, early 2000s, 2010s, 25 customers that week, we got leads coming in as well. Maybe 10% of them, 20% of them are getting the quick callbacks and the review requests. And, we're collecting on the jobs as quickly as we can. But a lot of the times, we're probably not following up. We probably weren't asking for that review request. It might have taken us weeks and weeks to finally, send that invoice or send the invoice follow up to finally collect that last job payment. So this was just a lot, right? There were a lot of pieces. So now the technology is kind of going along two tracks, which is just by digitizing it, we've made it so much easier for ourselves to automate some of these pieces. So you talked about a lot of examples with things that once you've set it up, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to manage it anymore because the automation is taking care of it, right? It's automatically sending that review request, or your invoice is gone 10 days without being paid. It's automatically sending that reminder and follow up. So these are those things that are immediately just taken off of your brain as a business owner. Because back in the day, Anthony, it was either you or your dad doing every single one of those things, or when you had somebody in the office, you were hoping that they were doing it with consistency, but you still had to go manage it, right? You still had to go double back and double check. And were they doing it the way that, you wanted them to do it? Were they following process? So that was a lot. The second track that you mentioned is where it can help us with that performance management and accountability with our teams. And so, like you mentioned, it can sometimes people can feel a little bit uncomfortable. They're like, well, something, whether it's AI or an automation, there's reporting now, there's visibility, there's more accountability into what I'm doing. And I think we found that, we see this a lot. Accountability can feel kind of uncomfortable where it hasn't existed before. And you mentioned some really great ways about how you've talked to your team about that kind of thing. So when you started introducing technology and AI to help double check the work that people are doing, to provide some of that coaching opportunity, to report on the metrics, how have you been communicating about that to your team in a way that's made it more palatable for them so that they've been embracing how AI helps them with the tracking and accountability instead of fighting it?
Yeah. So at first, we had some employees that they were just 100% okay with it because they understood it. And then you got other employees like, oh, now you got something micromanaging me or watching down on every little step that I do. And you just have a conversation with them and say, like, listen, it's not that we're trying to manage 100% what we're trying to do. We're just trying to put good data in so that we can get good data out in House Call Pro. That's just the goal. And so to combat those employees that think that it's micromanaging or anything like that, what we did was we created some sort of gamification where it's a reward system. So basically, hey, we're doing this because we need more data in or better data into our software so that we can build better reports and make some changes into our company so that we can be more efficient and be more profitable so that we can pay you more or give you more time off or hire somebody or fire somebody. Not, don't tell them about the fire.
That's all of that.
But we made it a fun reporting system. So basically, what we did was like, hey, everyone that's filling out the invoices properly and putting in the right notes and putting all the pictures and all of the above, it's a point system. Whoever has the most points at the end of the month, you get a bonus. You get a nice little spiff. And all companies are different, so you could put $50, you could put $20, you could put $100. You could give them some sort of swag. Um, House Call Pro sends swag. You can give them the swag that the House Call Pro sends. So it's reward systems. That's probably the best route to go because everybody loves incentives. Hey, if I do this, what do I get in return? And just telling them it's your job, that's not going to fly nowadays. People are different, personalities are different, and everybody the psychological sense of it just doesn't sound right. So you just got to make it like, hey, AI is your friend, it's on your team, it's there to help you so you can get more points so that at the end of the month you win. And that's basically what we did in our system and in our team.
So well said. I think, the best thing that we can do as leaders in our businesses is be really clear with our teams about what success looks like. And so the second you have a system where we're measuring specific things and showing those results to the team, that's really clear communication that a lot of teams embrace, even if they're a little bit hesitant about it at first. And like you mentioned, tying it back to the ways that it's helping them, it's making their jobs and their lives easier so that the business can grow more effectively and that they have good job stability. Maybe they're growing in their role. And then that gamification piece so that we can even make it fun, right? Performance management doesn't always have to feel like a drag. We can make it a little more entertaining and engaging. So we talked about some really great before and afters and thoughts across kind of our back end operations. We talked about all of these little leaks and things that are really common in our businesses that everyone that's listening is familiar with. As we bring it to a close, Anthony, can you think of, any final recommendations or things that you would like to make sure that we, leave the audience with around next steps or the area that you would recommend the most as like the highest impact for them if they need to start with something? Any final recommendation?
Yeah, I would say, with you're already using a great software, House Call Pro with the technology that it has. Okay. So why not basically help it out with an AI agent? Okay. You've already got your pipeline if you have pipeline. So if you don't have pipeline, I 100% recommend you getting pipeline because House Call Pro also has automations in your pipeline. Um, it could follow up with customers depending on what stage customers are in. You can do automated text and automated emails. Now, in House Call Pro, it basically stops there. You can complement it outside using other AI agents to continue that and make it a little bit more detailed and add photos and add things like that. Put videos and ringless voicemails. But I would say start small, okay? Get your feet wet. If you have the funds, it's month to month. So I would recommend, hey, spend the $20 so that you can get the full experience, okay? Spend the $20 the first month. Mess with it, but like really mess with it. Don't just spend the $20 and use it twice and then say, it's not as good as you thought. Like really dig into it, ask it questions, role play with it. Use it with your team. That's one of the things that I do with House Call Pro or with ChatGPT is I role play with it. I use it as my coach. Hey, I had this conversation with a customer. This is how it went. How can I improve myself? I use it as a basically a critique. It's not going to hurt my feelings. It's a robot at the end of the day. Um, so I would say get the paid version. It's just $20, maybe 25. I'm not 100% sure, but it's month to month. That is 100%. I'm sure about that. And get your feet wet and really mess with it. That's my recommendation to everybody here.
Good feedback. So to say it back to you one more time, recommendation is take a look at the tools that you have right now and what kind of AI options you might have available that are easy and quick for you to set up and get some of these quick wins. And consider getting at least 1 month of a paid version of like ChatGPT or Claude and actually start trying to use it as a research partner, decision-making partner. And I loved that use case that you mentioned, Anthony, of, record yourself doing a sales call or talking to a customer and throw that transcript in and ask it for some coaching guidance and some feedback. And what am I not thinking about? What am I not realizing here that I should know that's going to help me be more effective as a business leader or as a salesperson, and see what kind of help that it can give you. Such strong points, Anthony. I'm really, really grateful for your time and your insight today. Everyone who's listening to this, the closing note that I want to leave you with is when we're thinking about technology, we're thinking about what automations, what AI can possibly do for us, and making sure that we're not falling behind our competitors and the market. The question that I would love for you to be asking yourselves is, how much better off is my business going to be if every single phone call gets answered? If every single estimate immediately has some automated text message and email follow-ups? If every missed invoice that hasn't been paid for a week had automated follow-ups, how much time is that going to save your business? How much easier is it going to be to collect that cash that you need to keep things going? How many more sales can you get if every single customer always gets a consistent automated review request? And just considering these little small things that really quickly stack up and translate into big dollars kept within the business and kept in your pocket. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Anthony, thank you again. I hope you guys enjoyed the session.
Yep. Good luck, guys.
Coming up next, we're heading into our breakout rooms. This is your opportunity to go deeper, ask questions live, connect with other pros, explore specific tools and strategies, and interact directly with coaches, experts, partners, and contractors navigating many of the same challenges you are. Choose the room that feels most relevant to where you are in your business journey, whether that's learning something new, solving a challenge, discovering new tools, or simply connecting with others in the industry. We'll see you there.